Bambi the Reckoning represents a bold and disturbing entry into the twisted childhood universe, transforming the beloved Disney character into a nightmarish creature of vengeance. Released in July 2025, this British independent horror film directed by Dan Allen takes the innocent story of a young deer and twists it into a tale of environmental destruction, toxic mutation, and bloody revenge. The film opens not with the gentle forest scenes audiences might expect, but with a stark reminder that this version of Bambi exists in a world where corporate negligence and human cruelty have consequences far more severe than anything Walt Disney ever imagined. The movie begins with a haunting prologue set in the past, establishing the tragic origin story that will drive the entire narrative forward. A young fawn named Bambi lives peacefully in the forest alongside his mother, embodying the innocence and natural beauty that made the original character so endearing to generations of children. However, this peaceful existence is shattered when a poacher's bullet takes his mother's life, leaving the young deer orphaned and alone in a world that suddenly seems hostile and dangerous. This traumatic event serves as the first domino in a chain of tragedies that will ultimately transform Bambi from an innocent forest creature into a monster driven by grief and rage. As the story progresses through this establishing sequence, viewers witness Bambi's journey from childhood trauma to adult companionship. The deer eventually encounters a female deer named Faline, and together they create a new family unit, bringing new life into the forest through their offspring. This period represents hope and healing, suggesting that perhaps the cycle of violence and loss can be broken through love and family bonds. However, the film quickly establishes that in this dark version of the Bambi story, happiness is fragile, and tragedy is never far away. The pivotal moment that transforms this from a story of survival into a tale of horror occurs when Fallen becomes the victim of corporate negligence and human carelessness. A truck carrying toxic waste from Wybexer Pharmaceuticals strikes and kills Faline as she attempts to cross a road, leaving Bambi once again devastated by loss. The impact of the truck not only takes Faline's life, but also spills toxic chemicals into the surrounding environment, contaminating the river and forest ecosystem that served as home to countless creatures. In the chaos and panic following this tragedy, Bambi's offspring disappears, completing the trifecta of loss that will drive him to seek revenge against humanity. He drinks from the contaminated river, ingesting the toxic waste that has poisoned his homeland. The chemicals work their dark magic on his system, mutating him from a graceful forest creature into something far more sinister. His antlers become razor-sharp weapons, his eyes take on a zombie-like appearance that speaks of death and decay, and his once gentle nature is replaced by an insatiable thirst for vengeance against the humans who have destroyed everything he held dear. The transformation sequence establishes the film's central theme of environmental destruction and its consequences. The toxic waste serves as both a literal plot device and a metaphor for the ways human industrial activity poisons the natural world. Bambi's mutation represents natural world. Bambi's mutation represents nature fighting back against those who would exploit and contaminate it, turning a victim of human negligence into an instrument of natural justice. His new form is both terrifying and tragic, a reminder that monsters are often created by the very people who later become their victims. With this backstory established, the film transitions to the present day, where the main narrative begins with the introduction of the human characters who will become entangled in Bambi's quest for revenge. Xana, portrayed by Roxanne McKee, emerges as the film's primary protagonist, a strong-willed mother traveling with her young son Benji, played by Tom Mulheron. Their journey to spend Thanksgiving with family members becomes the catalyst for the horror that follows, as their path leads them directly into Bambi's territory and into the crosshairs of his rage. The family dynamics introduced in these early scenes provide important context for understanding the relationships that will be tested throughout the film. Xana is traveling to meet her husband Simon, played by Alex Cooke, who has promised to join them for the holiday celebration. The extended family includes Simon's mother Mary, portrayed by Nicola Wright, a woman suffering from dementia, whose condition will play a crucial role in the story's development. Also present are Simon's brothers Andrew and Joshua, along with Andrew's wife Harriet, played by Samira Mighty, and their teenage son Harrison, portrayed by Joseph Greenwood. The initial taxi ride that brings Xana and Benji to their destination serves multiple purposes in the narrative structure. It establishes the remote location where most of the action will take place, provides exposition about the family relationships and dynamics, and creates the first opportunity for Bambi to make his presence known to the protagonists. The taxi driver becomes the film's first victim, attacked and killed by Bambi in a scene that immediately establishes the threat level and demonstrates the creature's enhanced abilities and ruthless nature. The attack on the taxi serves as both a shock moment for audiences and a crucial plot point that strands the main characters in Bambi's territory. With their transportation destroyed and the driver dead, Xana and Benji must make their way on foot to Mary's house, a journey that takes them deeper into the forest where Bambi holds dominion. This forced trek through dangerous terrain builds tension, while also providing opportunities for character development and relationship building between mother and son. Upon reaching Mary's house, the film takes time to establish the setting and introduce the extended cast of characters who will populate the remainder of the story. The house itself becomes a character in the narrative, serving as both refuge and trap for the family members who gather within its walls. Mary's condition adds an element of unpredictability to the proceedings, as her dementia causes her to behave in ways that sometimes seem to anticipate or even welcome Bambi's presence. Her drawings of deer scattered throughout the house serve as ominous foreshadowing of the terror to come. The family gathering that was meant to be a celebration quickly becomes a nightmare, as the reality of their situation becomes clear. Simon's absence creates tension and worry, while the personalities of the various family members begin to clash under stress. Andrew, portrayed by Geoffrey Banks, attempts to take charge of the situation, while Joshua, played by Luke Cavendish, seems less equipped to handle the crisis. Harriet tries to maintain normalcy for the sake of her son Harrison, but the facade becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as the danger mounts. The film introduces a subplot involving 3 hunters working for Wybexer Pharmaceuticals, the same company responsible for the toxic waste that created the monster they now seek to eliminate. Michael, Tyler, and Eddie represent corporate attempts to cover up their responsibility for the environmental disaster that created Bambi. Their presence adds layers to the story's themes about corporate accountability and the lengths companies will go to avoid responsibility for their actions. These characters serve as both antagonists and eventual victims, representing different aspects of human greed and callousness. Michael, portrayed by Adrian Relf, emerges as the most calculating and ruthless of the 3 hunters. His professional approach to hunting Bambi reveals that this is not the first cleanup operation he has conducted for Wybexer, suggesting a pattern of environmental crimes and cover-ups that extends far beyond this single incident. Tyler, played by Big Tobbs, and Eddie, portrayed by Ewan Borthwick, serve as his subordinates, men who follow orders without questioning the moral implications of their actions. The hunters' presence in the story serves multiple narrative purposes. They provide exposition about Bambi's origin story and the corporate conspiracy behind his creation. They represent different types of human antagonists for both Bambi and the family to contend with, and they demonstrate the film's theme that often the real monsters are human beings driven by greed and selfishness. Their eventual fates serve as a form of poetic justice, as they become victims of the very creature their employer's negligence created. As night falls and the family attempts to secure the house against the unknown threat lurking outside, the film ratchets up the tension through a series of encounters that establish Bambi's intelligence and tactical abilities. Unlike typical movie monsters who rely purely on brute force, this version of Bambi demonstrates cunning and planning in his attacks. He uses the forest environment to his advantage, setting traps and creating diversions that separate his victims and make them vulnerable to his predation. Bambi's mutated form is revealed in all its horrifying glory, with practical effects and CGI combining to create a creature that is both recognizably derived from the gentle deer of popular culture and utterly transformed into something monstrous. Harriet becomes one of the early victims during this attack, killed by Bambi in a scene that demonstrates both his physical capabilities and his complete lack of mercy for the humans he encounters. Her death serves as a wake-up call for the remaining family members, forcing them to acknowledge that their situation is far more dire than they initially understood. The loss also creates emotional stakes for the surviving characters, particularly her husband Andrew and son Harrison, whose grief and desire for revenge will influence their decisions throughout the remainder of the film. The family's attempt to escape the house and reach safety provides opportunities for both action sequences and character development. Their flight to a caravan in the woods forces them to work together while also revealing the different ways they respond to extreme stress and danger. Some characters rise to the occasion and demonstrate courage and resourcefulness, while others reveal selfish or cowardly tendencies that put the group at risk. During their escape attempt, the film delivers one of its most shocking moments when Joshua is accidentally killed by Tyler, one of the hunters who mistakes him for Bambi in the darkness. This friendly fire incident serves multiple purposes in the narrative, demonstrating the chaos and confusion that pervades the situation while also showing how the hunter's presence makes the situation more dangerous for everyone involved. The accidental killing also serves to establish Tyler as a character whose incompetence will eventually contribute to his own downfall. The caravan sequence provides a temporary respite from the immediate danger, while allowing for important exposition and character development. Here the film reveals more details about the connection between Simon and the Wybexer Corporation, establishing that Xana's husband is not merely an innocent victim, but someone who bears responsibility for the current crisis. This revelation adds layers of moral complexity to the story, as it forces the audience to grapple with questions about guilt, responsibility, and redemption. Andrew's death during this sequence serves as another demonstration of Bambi's relentless pursuit and the futility of trying to escape his territory. The character's demise also serves to thin the ranks of potential victims while adding to the mounting sense of despair and hopelessness that pervades the story. Each death raises the stakes for the surviving characters, while also serving as a reminder that in this version of the Bambi story, there are no guarantees of survival or happy endings. Harrison's encounter with the mutated rabbits represents one of the film's most disturbing sequences, expanding the scope of the toxic contamination beyond Bambi himself to show how the environmental disaster has affected multiple species throughout the forest ecosystem. The rabid-aggressive rabbits serve as a reminder that Bambi is not the only creature transformed by the toxic waste, and that the entire forest has become a dangerous place where normal rules of nature no longer apply. The young man's death at the hands of these mutated creatures serves multiple purposes in the narrative structure. It eliminates one of the younger characters whose survival might have provided false hope for audiences. It demonstrates the widespread nature of the contamination and mutation, and it provides a particularly gruesome and memorable death scene that reinforces the film's horror credentials. The sequence also serves to separate Harrison from the main group, making him an isolated and vulnerable target. When the surviving family members and the hunters converge at the den where Simon and his co-worker Joe are hiding, the film shifts into its final act with a series of revelations that recontextualize everything that has happened previously. Simon's confession that he was responsible for killing Feline and dumping the toxic waste provides the missing piece of the puzzle, explaining why Bambi has targeted this particular family and location for his revenge. The revelation about Simon's role in creating the monster adds moral complexity to the story's themes about responsibility and consequences. Rather than being random victims of a senseless tragedy, the family becomes entangled in Bambi's revenge because one of their own bears direct responsibility for the environmental crimes that created the monster in the first place. This connection transforms the story from a simple monster movie into a meditation on guilt, responsibility, and the ways that past actions can return to haunt entire families. Joe's presence as Simon's co-worker provides additional context about the corporate culture and decision-making that led to the environmental disaster. Her character serves as a witness to Simon's actions while also representing another potential victim of the consequences of corporate negligence. Her eventual sacrifice to try to stop Bambi demonstrates that some people are willing to take responsibility and make amends for their actions, even at the cost of their own lives. The discovery of the captive fawn in the hunter's garage provides one of the film's most emotionally charged moments, as it reveals that Bambi's missing offspring has survived and been captured by the very people sent to eliminate its father. The young deer's mistreatment at the hands of Tyler and Eddie serves to underscore the callous and cruel nature of the human antagonists, while also providing a potential path toward resolution of the conflict. Benji's decision to free the young fawn represents a moral choice that contrasts sharply with the selfish and destructive actions of the adult character. His compassion for the innocent creature demonstrates that not all humans are deserving of Bambi's wrath, and suggests that perhaps there is still hope for redemption and healing, despite all the violence and tragedy that has occurred. The deaths of Tyler and Eddie at Bambi's hands serve as both visceral horror sequences and moments of poetic justice. Tyler's decapitation while relieving himself provides a darkly comic element to his demise, while Eddie's more elaborate death by dismemberment demonstrates Bambi's capacity for creative and brutal revenge. Both deaths serve to thin the ranks of antagonists while building toward the film's climactic confrontation. Michael's final confrontation with the family represents the culmination of the corporate conspiracy subplot, as the lead hunter attempts to recover the fawn and eliminate any witnesses to Wybexer's involvement in the environmental disaster. His willingness to threaten a child and abandon any pretense of moral behavior demonstrates the depths of corruption within the corporate structure that created this crisis in the first place. Simon's abandonment of his own family in the face of danger serves as the ultimate revelation of his cowardly character. Having created the monster through his irresponsible actions, he proves unwilling to face the consequences or protect the innocent people who have become entangled in the situation because of his choices. His decision to flee rather than stand and fight marks him as irredeemably selfish and cowardly. The moment when Xana and Benji return the young fawn to Bambi represents the film's emotional and thematic climax. This act of compassion and understanding serves as a potential bridge between the human and natural worlds, suggesting that reconciliation might be possible if people are willing to acknowledge their mistakes and make amends for their actions. The scene provides hope that the cycle of violence and revenge might finally be broken. However, the film refuses to provide easy answers or simple resolutions to the complex moral issues it has raised. Michael's decision to shoot Bambi, despite the apparent peace between the creature and the family, demonstrates that some people are too committed to violence and self-interest to accept peaceful solutions. His actions ensure that the tragedy will continue to its bitter end, regardless of any attempts at reconciliation. Mary's final act of killing Michael serves as both a moment of personal redemption and a demonstration of the film's themes about justice and responsibility. Her recovery from dementia at this crucial moment suggests that some moral clarity can emerge even from the chaos and confusion of tragic circumstances. Her decision to eliminate the final human antagonist ensures that at least some measure of justice is served. The film's conclusion, with Bambi dying beside his rescued offspring, provides a bittersweet ending that acknowledges both the tragedy of the situation and the possibility of hope for the future. While the adult Bambi cannot be saved or redeemed, his young fawn represents the possibility that the next generation might find a different path forward, one not defined by revenge and violence. Simon's death at the hands of the mutated rabbits serves as final justice for his role in creating the environmental disaster that set all these tragic events in motion. His demise ensures that he faces consequences for his actions, while also demonstrating that the contamination he caused continues to claim victims, even as the main story reaches its conclusion. The film's final images of the wounded fawn, trying to wake its dying father, provide a powerful emotional conclusion that mirrors the opening tragedy, while suggesting that the cycle of loss and grief will continue into the next generation. However, the presence of sympathetic humans like Xana and Benji offers hope that perhaps future interactions between humanity and nature might be characterized by understanding rather than exploitation. Throughout its runtime, Bambi The Reckoning serves as both an effective horror film and a pointed environmental parable. The movie uses its monster movie framework to explore serious themes about corporate responsibility, environmental destruction, and the long-term consequences of prioritizing profit over environmental protection. The transformation of the beloved Disney character into an agent of vengeance serves as a metaphor for the ways that nature might eventually fight back against human exploitation and destruction. The film's technical achievements deserve recognition alongside. The creature design for the mutated Bambi successfully transforms the familiar deer into something genuinely frightening while retaining enough of the original character's visual elements to make the transformation meaningful. The practical effects work in the death scenes provides visceral impact without becoming gratuitously exploitative, serving the story's themes rather than overwhelming. The performances from the cast help ground the fantastic elements in emotional reality, with Roxanne McKee delivering a particularly strong performance as Xana, a mother forced to confront both external threats and uncomfortable truths about her own family. Tom Mulheron brings genuine vulnerability and innocence to his role as Benji, making his character's moral choices feel authentic and meaningful, rather than artificially noble. The film's pacing effectively builds tension throughout its runtime, using quieter character moments to develop relationships and reveal important plot information, while punctuating the narrative with effectively staged horror sequences. The escalating series of revelations about the corporate conspiracy and family connections helps maintain audience engagement while building toward the emotional climax. The movie's exploration of family dynamics under extreme stress provides the way different characters respond to the crisis reveals their true natures and priorities, with some rising to the occasion, while others reveal selfish or cowardly tendencies. These character revelations help drive the plot, while also serving the film's broader themes about moral responsibility. The corporate conspiracy subplot provides contemporary relevance to the classic monster movie formula. The Wybexer Corporation serves as a stand-in for real companies that prioritize profits over environmental responsibility, while the cover-up attempts reflect actual corporate responses to environmental disasters. The film's treatment of violence manages to be both shocking and purposeful, using graphic content to serve its themes rather than simply to provide cheap thrills. Each death serves a specific narrative purpose, whether advancing the plot, revealing character information, or reinforcing the story's moral framework. The violence feels like a natural consequence of the character's choices, rather than arbitrary punishment. The environmental themes are woven throughout the narrative without becoming preachy or overwhelming the entertainment value. The toxic waste serves as both a plot device and a symbol of broader environmental destruction, while the forest setting emphasizes humanity's relationship with the natural world. The film suggests that environmental crimes ultimately have consequences, even if those consequences are delayed or unexpected. The movie's use of the familiar Bambi character adds layers of meaning to the story that would not be present with an original creature design. The transformation of this beloved symbol of innocence into an instrument of vengeance serves as a powerful metaphor for the ways that human actions can corrupt and destroy the very things we claim to cherish. The irony of Disney's gentle forest creature becoming a horror movie monster provides commentary on the gap between romanticized views of nature and environmental reality. The family structure at the center of the story reflects broader themes about responsibility and consequences across generations. Simon's past actions endanger not only himself, but also his wife, son, and extended family, demonstrating how environmental crimes affect entire communities rather than just their immediate perpetrators. The involvement of innocent family members in paying for Simon's sins adds moral complexity to the film's British setting and production values give it a distinctive identity within the broader landscape of American horror cinema. The remote countryside locations and manor house setting provide an atmospheric backdrop that enhances the isolation and vulnerability of the characters. The production design effectively creates a sense of place that feels both realistic and slightly otherworldly. The cinematography makes effective use of the forest locations to create a sense of claustrophobia and disorientation, using the natural environment as both beautiful backdrop and dangerous maze. The contrast between the peaceful appearance of the woodland setting and the violence that occurs within it reinforces the film's themes about the hidden consequences of environmental destruction. The sound design and musical score work together to create an atmosphere of mounting dread and tension, using both naturalistic forest sounds and more obviously artificial elements to keep audiences on edge. The creature vocalizations for Bambi effectively transform familiar deer sounds into something genuinely frightening, while the musical score provides emotional support for the story's more dramatic moments. The film's makeup and special effects work deserves particular recognition for creating practical gore effects that feel visceral and real without becoming cartoonish or over the top. The balance between showing enough to create impact while leaving enough to the imagination helps maintain the horror atmosphere without alienating audiences who might be put off by excessive graphic content. The editing maintains effective pacing throughout the film's runtime, building tension during quiet moments while providing satisfying payoffs during action sequences. The structure effectively balances character development with plot advancement, ensuring that audiences remain invested in the characters' fates while also advancing the larger narrative. The dialogue serves multiple functions, providing necessary exposition while also revealing character information and relation. The conversations between family members feel natural and authentic, helping audiences connect with the characters before the horror elements take over. The revelations about past events are integrated smoothly into the natural flow of conversation, rather than feeling forced or artificial. The film's themes about redemption and moral responsibility provide depth beyond typical monster movie fare. The question of whether people can make amends for past mistakes runs throughout the narrative, with different characters providing different answers through their actions. Some characters attempt to make amends for their mistakes, while others compound their errors through continued selfish behavior. The movie's treatment of corporate responsibility reflects contemporary concerns about environmental protection and business ethics. The Wybexer Corporation represents the type of company that prioritizes short-term profits over long-term environmental consequences, while the cover-up efforts reflect real-world corporate responses to environmental disasters. The film suggests that such companies ultimately face consequences for their actions, even if justice comes in unexpected forms. The character of Mary adds an interesting dimension to the story through her dementia, which sometimes seems to give her insight into events that other characters cannot understand. Her condition serves as both a source of tension and a potential source of wisdom, suggesting that different ways of understanding reality might reveal truths that conventional thinking misses. The transformation of beloved childhood characters into horror movie monsters has become a recognized subgenre in recent years, but Bambi the Reckoning manages to bring fresh perspectives to this familiar concept. By grounding the transformation in environmental themes and corporate responsibility, the film provides meaningful context for its shocking imagery, rather than simply relying on the novelty of corrupting innocent characters. The film's exploration of grief and loss as motivating factors for both human and animal behavior adds emotional depth to what could have been a simple revenge story. Bambi's actions are driven not by mindless aggression, but by the very real trauma of losing his family to human negligence. This psychological foundation makes his transformation and subsequent actions feel like natural consequences rather than arbitrary plot development. The movie's final act successfully brings together all the various plot threads and character arcs that have been developing throughout the story. The revelations about Simon's role in creating the monster provide satisfying explanations for events while also raising the stakes for the final confrontations. The resolution feels both surprising and inevitable, honoring the story's themes while providing appropriate consequences for the character's actions. The film's budget limitations are generally well concealed through effective use of practical locations and focused special effects work. Rather than attempting elaborate set pieces that might have stretched resources too thin, the filmmakers concentrate on creating a few highly effective sequences that serve the story's needs while staying within realistic production constraints. The movie succeeds in creating genuine sympathy for its monster while also maintaining the real level necessary for effective. Bambi's tragic backstory and legitimate grievances against humanity make his actions understandable, even when they are not forgivable. This moral complexity elevates the material above simple good versus evil narratives. The environmental message is delivered without heavy-handed preaching, allowing audiences to draw their own conclusions about the parallels between the fictional toxic waste disaster and real-world environment. The film presents its themes through story and character rather than through explicit political statements, making the message more palatable to audiences who might resist more direct approaches. The casting choices generally serve the material well, with actors who can handle both the dramatic requirements of their roles and the physical demands of the horror sequences. The family relationships feel authentic and lived in, making the emotional stakes feel real rather than merely functional. The antagonist characters are sufficiently unsympathetic to make their eventual fates feel like justice rather than mere violence. The production design creates effective contrast between the domestic spaces where the family seeks refuge and the wild forest where Bambi holds dominion. The house and caravan settings feel like genuine places where people might live and gather, while the forest locations emphasize the alien and dangerous nature of the environment where the monster rules. The film's runtime is well judged for its material, providing enough time for character development and plot exposition without overstaying its welcome or padding the story with unnecessary material. The pacing maintains audience interest throughout while building to a satisfying climax that resolves the major plot and character arcs. The movie's place within the larger Twisted Childhood universe provides additional context for audiences familiar with other entries in the series, while also working as a standalone story for viewers, encountering this interpretation of familiar characters for the first time. The shared universe elements enhance rather than overwhelm the individual story. The film's approach to violence and gore strikes an effective balance between providing the visceral thrills that horror audiences expect, while also serving the story's thematic purposes. The deaths feel like natural consequences of the characters' choices and actions, rather than arbitrary punishment, making the violence feel meaningful rather than gratuitous. The creature design for the mutated Bambi successfully transforms the familiar character into something genuinely frightening, while maintaining enough recognizable elements to make the transformation meaningful. The design choices emphasize both the character's tragic origins and his current dangerous nature, creating a monster that audiences can simultaneously fear and pity. The supporting characters each serve specific functions in the narrative while also feeling like real people. Even the relatively minor characters have distinct personalities and believable relationships with the main characters, helping to create a world that feels lived in rather than artificially constructed for the purposes of the plot. The film's technical achievements in makeup, special effects, and creature work demonstrate that effective horror can be created without massive budgets, provided that creativity and craftsmanship are applied to the available resource. The practical effects work in particular provides visceral impact that feels more real and immediate than purely digital alternatives might have achieved. The movie's themes about family, responsibility, and redemption provide emotional weight that elevates the material above simple monster movie entertainment. The questions about whether people can make amends for past mistakes and whether forgiveness is possible even in extreme circumstances give audiences something to think about beyond the immediate thrills of the horror sequences. The environmental themes are particularly relevant given contemporary concerns about climate change, pollution, and corporate responsibility for environmental protection. The film's suggestion that environmental crimes ultimately have consequences resonates with real-world anxieties about the long-term effects of prioritizing short-term economic gains over environmental sustainability. The transformation of the innocent Bambi character into an agent of vengeance serves as a powerful metaphor for the ways that human actions can corrupt and destroy the very things we claim to value. The irony of the beloved Disney character becoming a horror movie monster provides commentary on the gap between our romanticized ideas about nature and the reality of environmental destruction. The film's British production values and sensibilities give it a distinctive identity within the horror genre, with atmospheric locations and a slightly different approach to familiar material. The countryside settings and manor house locations provide an effective backdrop for the story, while also creating the isolation necessary for the horror elements to work effectively. Bambi The Reckoning ultimately succeeds as both entertainment and commentary, providing the thrills and scares that horror audiences expect, while also offering meaningful themes about environmental responsibility, corporate accountability, and the long-term consequence of priority. The film demonstrates that familiar material can be transformed into something fresh and relevant through careful attention to character, theme, and craftsmanship. The movie serves as an effective entry point into the Twisted Childhood universe while also working as a standalone horror film for audiences unfamiliar with the broader series. The environmental themes provide contemporary relevance while the family drama adds emotional stakes that make audiences care about the characters' fates beyond mere curiosity about who will survive. The film's success in transforming a beloved children's character into effective horror demonstrates the potential for creative reinterpretation of familiar material, provided that the transformation serves meaningful thematic purposes rather than simply providing shock value. Bambi The Reckoning proves that even the most innocent characters can be reimagined, in ways that provide both entertainment and insight into contemporary concerns. The creative process behind Bambi The Reckoning reveals fascinating insights into how a beloved children's character can be transformed into effective horror entertainment while maintaining thematic depth and narrative coherence. Director Dan Allen brings considerable experience to the project, having previously worked on other genre films including It Came From Below, which demonstrated his ability to balance creature feature elements with character-driven storytelling. His approach to adapting the Bambi character reflects both respect for the source material and understanding of contemporary horror audiences' expectations. The production design team faced unique challenges in creating a monster that would be both recognizable as Bambi and genuinely frightening as a horror antagonist. The creature design process involved extensive conceptual work to determine exactly how much of the original deer appearance should be retained versus how dramatically the character should be altered by the toxic mutation. Early concept art explored various approaches, from subtle changes that emphasized the character's tragic nature to more extreme transformations that prioritized pure horror impact over emotional connection. The final creature design strikes an effective balance between these competing concerns, maintaining enough of Bambi's original visual elements to make the transformation meaningful while incorporating enough horrific details to create genuine form. The massive twisted antlers serve as both weapons and symbols of the character's corruption, while the zombified eyes suggest death and decay without completely obscuring the character's identity. The creature's movements retain some of the grace and agility associated with deer, while incorporating predatory elements that emphasize the danger he represents. The makeup and special effects team employed a combination of practical effects and computer-generated imagery to bring the mutated Bambi to life on screen. The practical elements included detailed prosthetics and makeup work for the human victims of Bambi's attacks, creating visceral gore effects that feel tangible and immediate. The computer-generated elements focused primarily on Bambi himself, allowing for complex movements and interactions that would have been difficult or impossible to achieve through purely practical means. The integration of practical and digital effects required careful planning during the production process, with scenes choreographed to maximize the effectiveness of both approaches. The practical gore effects were designed to complement rather than compete with the digital creature work, creating a cohesive visual experience that serves the story's needs. The filmmakers made conscious decisions about when to show Bambi clearly and when to keep him partially hidden, using shadow and suggestion to enhance the creature's impact while also managing budget constraints. The forest locations chosen for filming provide crucial atmosphere and authenticity to the story, with the British countryside offering both beautiful natural backdrops and genuinely isolated settings that enhance the character's vulnerability. The production team scouted extensively to find locations that would photograph well, while also providing practical advantages for filming complex action sequences. The remote locations also contributed to the authentic sense of isolation that permeates the film, making the character's predicament feel genuinely desperate. The house where much of the action takes place required careful attention to both interior and exterior design elements. The production team needed to create spaces that would feel like a real family home while also providing the layout necessary for effective horror sequences. The various rooms and passages needed to support both character moments and action scenes, with careful attention paid to sight lines and movement patterns that would enhance tension and suspense. The cinematography approach emphasizes the contrast between the peaceful appearance of the woodland setting and the violence that occurs within it. Director of photography choices regarding lighting and color palette help establish mood, while also serving practical purposes related to hiding or revealing the creature at dramatically appropriate moments. The use of natural lighting during daylight scenes creates a deceptively peaceful atmosphere, while the night sequences employ shadow and darkness to enhance both the horror elements and the production's budget efficiency. The sound design process involved creating an entirely new vocal palette for the mutated Bambi, transforming familiar deer sounds into something genuinely frightening. The sound team experimented with various approaches to creature vocalizations, layering natural animal sounds with more artificial elements to create something that feels both organic and otherworldly. The environmental sound design also plays a crucial role in building atmosphere, using forest ambience to create both peaceful moments and mounting tension as circumstances change. The musical score provides emotional support for the story's more dramatic moments while also enhancing the horror elements during appropriate sequences. Composer choices regarding instrumentation and musical themes help establish character relationships. The score successfully walks the line between supporting the emotional core of the story and providing the dramatic emphasis necessary for effective horror entertainment. The editing process required careful pacing to balance character development with plot advancement and horror sequences. The editorial team needed to maintain audience engagement during quieter moments while building towards satisfying payoffs during action sequences. The structure effectively integrates exposition about the environmental themes and corporate conspiracy elements without slowing down the narrative momentum or overwhelming audiences with information. The casting process focused on finding actors who could handle both the dramatic requirements of their roles and the physical demands of the horror sequences. Roxanne McKee brings considerable experience from her work in Game of Thrones and other productions, providing the strong central performance necessary to anchor the emotional elements of the story. The supporting cast members each contribute distinct personalities and relationship dynamics that help create a believable family unit before the horror elements take over. The screenplay development process involved extensive research into environmental issues and corporate responsibility themes, ensuring that the political elements of the story would feel authentic and relevant rather than superficial or preachy. Writer Rhys Warrington worked to integrate these themes naturally into the character relationships and plot development, avoiding heavy-handed messaging while still delivering meaningful commentary on contemporary environmental content. The production schedule required careful coordination between the various practical and digital effects elements, with certain sequences requiring extensive pre-planning to ensure that all the technical components would work together effectively. The remote location shooting presented logistical challenges that required creative solutions from the production team, including power generation and equipment transportation, that affected both the creature animation process involved extensive motion capture work and digital sculpting to create a monster that would move convincingly while also maintaining the visual characteristics necessary for the story. The animation team studied real deer movements and behavior to inform their work, while also incorporating predatory elements that would make Bambi feel genuinely dangerous. The balance between realistic animal movement and fantastical horror elements required considerable experimentation and refinement throughout the production process. The practical gore effects were designed and executed by experienced makeup artists who brought creativity and craftsmanship to the various death scenes throughout the film. Each victim's demise required unique approaches to achieving the desired visual impact while remaining within the production's budget constraints. The effects team used a combination of traditional techniques and modern materials to create memorable death scenes that serve the story's themes, while providing the visceral thrills that horror audiences expect. The production design extends beyond the creature work to encompass all the visual elements that establish the story's world and atmosphere. The design team created detailed backstories for the various locations and characters, ensuring that even background elements would support the overall narrative and thematic goals. The attention to detail in props, costumes, and set decoration helps create a world that feels lived in and authentic rather than artificially constructed for the plot. The color grading and post-production process involved extensive work to establish the visual tone and atmosphere that would best serve the story's needs. The color palette choices help differentiate between different locations and emotional states while also enhancing the practical and digital effects work. The post-production team worked closely with the director and cinematographer to ensure that the final visual presentation would support both the horror elements and the more subtle characters. The marketing campaign for the film needed to balance the novelty of the concept with genuine quality indicators that would attract audiences beyond those simply curious about the premise. The promotional materials emphasize both the horror credentials of the creative team and the environmental themes that give the story contemporary relevance. The trailer and other marketing elements work to establish appropriate audience expectations while avoiding spoilers that might diminish the impact. The film's place within the larger Twisted Childhood universe required coordination with other entries in the series while also ensuring that Bambi The Reckoning would work as a standalone story. The shared universe elements provide additional context for audiences familiar with other films while enhancing rather than overwhelming the individual story being told. The connections to other entries are subtle enough to avoid confusing newcomers, while providing satisfying references for dedicated fans of the series. The budget management process required creative approaches to achieving the desired production values while working within realistic financial constraints. The filmmakers made strategic decisions about where to allocate resources for maximum impact, focusing on areas that would most direct serve the story's needs. The practical locations and concentrated effects work demonstrate that effective horror can be created without massive budgets, provided that creativity and craftsmanship are applied thoughtfully. The environmental themes required research into real-world issues surrounding corporate environmental responsibility and the long-term effects of industrial pollution. The filmmakers consulted with environment. The integration of these themes into the horror framework demonstrates how genre entertainment can address serious issues without sacrificing entertainment value. The family dynamics portrayed in the film drew from the cast members' own experiences and relationships, helping to create authentic feeling connections between characters. The actors worked with the director to develop believable family histories and relationship patterns that would inform their performances throughout the story. These character relationships provide the emotional foundation that makes audiences care about the characters' fates beyond simple curiosity about who will survive the monster attacks. The creature behavior patterns were developed through careful consideration of animal psychology and predator behavior, ensuring that Bambi's actions would feel motivated and consistent rather than arbitrary. The creative team studied both deer behavior and predatory animal patterns to create a monster that would feel like a believable evolution of the original character rather than a completely different creature wearing familiar appearance elements. The death scenes were choreographed and executed with careful attention to both visual impact and story function, ensuring that each victim's demise would serve specific narrative purposes rather than simply providing gore for its own sake. The effects team worked closely with the stunt coordinators and actors to create memorable moments that would advance the plot while delivering the visceral thrills that horror audiences expect from this type of entertainment. The location scouting process involved extensive research into British countryside areas that would provide both visual appeal and practical advantages for the complex filming required. The production team needed to find locations that would offer the isolation necessary for the story while also providing access for equipment and crew. The chosen locations contribute significantly to the film's atmospheric effectiveness, while also supporting the environmental themes through their natural beauty. The costume design process focused on creating authentic-feeling clothing that would support character development while also being practical for the physical demands of the horror sequence. The design team paid careful attention to details that would reveal character information and relationships while ensuring that costumes would survive the various action sequences and effects work required throughout the filming process. The stunt coordination required extensive planning for the various action sequences and creature attacks throughout the film. The stunt team worked closely with the effects departments to ensure that all the safety considerations were paramount given the remote locations and complex technical requirements of many sequences. The film's editing rhythm was carefully calibrated to maintain audience engagement throughout the runtime, while building towards satisfying climaxes during the major horror sequences. The editorial team experimented with different approaches to pacing and structure, ultimately settling on an approach that balanced. The final cut maintains momentum while providing adequate time for audiences to connect emotionally with the characters. The sound mixing process involved balancing dialogue clarity with atmospheric elements and creature sounds to create an immersive audio experience that would enhance both the horror and dramatic elements of the story. The mixing team worked to ensure that important story information would remain audible, while still providing the dynamic range necessary. The final sound design contributes significantly to the film's ability to create and maintain tension throughout its runtime. The visual effects supervision required coordination between multiple departments to ensure that all the technical elements would work together to serve the story's needs. The effects supervisor worked closely with the director, cinematographer, and various department heads to establish workflows and technical standards that would support the creative vision while remaining. The collaborative approach helped ensure that the final product would feel cohesive despite the complex technical requirements. The film's approach to violence and gore reflects contemporary audience expectations while also serving the story's thematic purposes. The creative team made conscious decisions about the level and type of violence that would be most effective for their particular story, avoiding gratuitous content while still providing the visceral impact necessary. The violence feels like a natural consequence of the character's choices and circumstances rather than arbitrary punishment. The creature performance required extensive coordination between the digital animation team and the practical effects departments to create consistent character behavior across different types of shots and sequences. The performance team studied animal behavior and movement patterns, while also incorporating elements that would make Bambi feel genuinely threatening rather. The final creature performance successfully balances sympathy and fear, making Bambi both pitiable and terrifying. The production's environmental consciousness extended beyond the story's themes to include practical considerations about sustainable filming practices and minimal environmental impact during location shooting. The production team made efforts to minimize their footprint in the natural locations while also using the filming process and opportunity to highlight. This approach reinforced the film's themes while demonstrating genuine commitment to the issues addressed in the story. The cast performances in Bambi The Reckoning showcase a range of talented actors who bring depth and authenticity to their roles, despite working within the challenging constraints of a horror genre piece. Roxanne McKee delivers a particularly compelling performance as Xana, drawing on her extensive television experience from shows like Game of Thrones and Dominion, to create a complex maternal figure who must protect her child while confronting difficult truths about her own family. Her portrayal successfully balances vulnerability with strength, creating a protagonist who feels genuinely human rather than simply serving as a vehicle for the horror elements. McKee's approach to the role required her to convey multiple layers of emotional complexity as Xana discovers the connection between her husband's past actions and their current predicament. The actress successfully navigates the character's journey from confused victim to empowered survivor with particular effectiveness in the scenes where she must make difficult moral choices about how to respond to Bambi's presence. Her performance anchors the film's emotional core while also providing the strength necessary to carry the audience through the more intense horror sequences. Tom Mulheron brings remarkable maturity to his role as Benji, creating a child character who feels authentic rather than artificially precocious. His natural chemistry with McKee helps establish the believable mother-son relationship that drives much of the film's emotional stakes. Mulheron's performance is particularly noteworthy in the scenes where Benji must confront adult realities and make moral choices that will affect everyone around him. The young actor manages to convey both childlike innocence and surprising wisdom without falling into typical child actor traps. The relationship between Xana and Benji serves as the emotional heart of the film, with both actors contributing to a dynamic that feels genuine and lived in. Their interactions provide moments of tenderness and humanity that contrast effectively with the horror elements while also raising the stakes for their survival. The chemistry between McKee and Mulheron helps audiences invest emotionally in their characters' fates beyond simple curiosity about who will survive the monster attacks. Nicola Wright brings considerable experience and gravitas to her role as Mary, the family matriarch whose dementia adds complexity to the group dynamics. Wright's performance successfully balances the confusion and vulnerability associated with her character's condition, while also suggesting deeper wisdom and insight that sometimes emerges despite her illness. Her portrayal avoids stereotypical representations of dementia, instead creating a nuanced character whose condition affects but does not define her contributions to the story. Wright's experience in genre filmmaking serves her well in handling the more intense sequences while maintaining the authenticity of her character's condition. Her performance is particularly effective in the moments where Mary seems to understand aspects of the situation that other characters miss, suggesting that her different way of processing reality might sometimes provide clearer insight than conventional thinking. The actress manages to make these moments feel organic rather than artificially mystical or convenient. Samira Mighty delivers a strong supporting performance as Harriet, bringing energy and personality to what could have been a thankless role as one of the potential victims. Her background in reality television and acting provides her with the confidence and natural charisma necessary to make her character memorable, even within the film's relatively brief run. Mighty's performance helps establish the family dynamics and relationships that give emotional weight to the horror elements. The actress successfully creates a character who feels like a real person with her own concerns and relationships rather than simply existing to advance the plot or provide another victim for the monster. Her scenes with the other family members help establish the believable relationships and dynamics that make the audience care about what happens to these people when they encounter Bambi's wrath. Geoffrey Banks brings intensity and authority to his role as Andrew, one of the family members who attempts to take charge during the crisis. His performance effectively conveys both leadership qualities and underlying fear as the situation escalates beyond anyone's control. Banks' experience in various film and television productions serves him well in balancing the character's protective instincts with his own survival concerns. The actor's portrayal helps establish the family hierarchy and decision-making dynamics that become crucial as the characters face increasingly dangerous situations. His performance provides a counterpoint to some of the other characters, while also demonstrating different ways that people respond to extreme stress and danger. Adrian Releff delivers a memorably sinister performance as Michael, the lead hunter working for the pharmaceutical corporation. His portrayal successfully creates a character who feels genuinely threatening even when he is not the primary antagonist of the film. Releff brings a cold professionalism to the role that makes Michael feel like a realistic corporate operative rather than a cartoonish villain. The actor's performance helps establish the corporate conspiracy elements of the story while also providing a human antagonist who serves as a counterpoint to the monster threat. His scenes with the other hunters help establish the moral corruption and callousness that characterizes the corporate response to the environmental disaster they helped create. Luke Cavendish and Alex Cooke provide solid supporting performances in their respective roles, contributing to the ensemble feel that makes the family dynamics believable and engaging. Both actors bring distinct personalities to their characters while also serving the larger narrative needs of the story. Their performances help flesh out the family relationships and provide additional emotional stakes for the horror elements. Joseph Greenwood brings appropriate teenage energy and vulnerability to his role as Harrison, creating a character who feels authentically young while also being capable of meaningful action within the story. His performance helps establish the generational dynamics within the family, while also providing another potential victim, see Fate audiences. The ensemble nature of the cast allows for multiple relationship dynamics and character interactions that help establish the world of the story before the horror elements take center stage. Each actor contributes to creating a believable family unit with realistic tensions and affections that make their predicament feel genuinely tragic rather than simply serving as setup for monster attacks. The performances successfully navigate the challenge of working within genre constraints while also creating characters who feel like real people rather than mere horror movie archetypes. The cast manages to find authentic moments and genuine emotion even within the heightened circumstances of the horror framework, helping audiences connect with the characters on an emotional level. The actors' ability to work with practical and digital effects elements demonstrates their professionalism and adaptability, as many scenes required them to react to threats and creatures that would be added in post-production. The believability of their reactions to the monster and other horror elements contribute significantly to the film's effectiveness in creating genuine scares and tension. The chemistry between the various cast members helps create believable family relationships and group dynamics that serve as the emotional foundation for the horror elements. The actors successfully establish character relationships and histories that feel authentic despite the limited runtime available for character development within the horror framework. His direction helps the actors find the balance between realistic human behavior and the heightened responses necessary for effective horror entertainment. The resulting performances feel grounded in authentic emotion while also delivering the dramatic impact necessary for the genre elements to work effectively. The casting choices reflect careful attention to finding actors who could handle both the dramatic and physical demands of their roles, while also each cast member contributes something unique to the ensemble while also working effectively within the group dynamic necessary for the family relationships to feel believable. The performances successfully convey the escalating tension and mounting desperation that drives the story forward, while also maintaining the character relationships and emotional stakes that make audiences care about the cast manages to keep the human elements of the story compelling even as the horror elements intensify throughout the runtime. The actors' work in establishing their characters' individual personalities and motivations helps create a world that feels lived in and authentic rather than artificially constructed for the purposes of the horror plot. Each character feels like they existed before the events of the film and would continue to exist afterward, which helps ground the fantastic elements in emotional reality. The ensemble work demonstrates the importance of strong casting in genre filmmaking, as the believability of the characters and their relationships directly affects audiences' investment in their fate. The cast successfully creates the emotional foundation necessary for the horror elements to have maximum impact, while also providing the dramatic satisfaction that elevates the material above simple monster movie entertainment. The performances reflect a contemporary approach to horror filmmaking that emphasizes character development and emotional authenticity alongside traditional genre thrills. The actors successfully navigate the balance between realistic human behavior and the dramatic responses necessary for effective horror sequences, creating characters who feel both relatable and capable of the actions required by the plot. The cast's work with the environmental and creature effects demonstrates their ability to maintain believable performances even when working with complex technical elements that would be added in post-production. Their reactions to the digital creature and various practical effects help sell the reality of the threat while maintaining the authenticity of their character relationships. The diversity of acting backgrounds and experience levels within the cast creates an interesting dynamic that serves the story well, with veteran performers like McKee and Wright providing stability, while younger actors like Mulheron bring fresh energy and perspective. This mixture of experience helps create a realistic family dynamic while also ensuring strong technical performance standards throughout. The actors' commitment to their roles helps overcome some of the inherent challenges of working within genre constraints and budget limitations. Their performances help audiences suspend disbelief and invest emotionally in the story, despite the fantastical elements, which is crucial for the film's success as both entertainment and environmental commentary. The cast's ability to work within the practical constraints of the production, while still delivering emotionally authentic performances, demonstrates their professionalism and dedication to the material. Their work helps elevate the film above its budgetary limitations by providing strong character work that serves both the horror elements and the underlying themes about environmental responsibility and family relationships. The ensemble performances successfully create the sense of a real family under extreme stress, with each actor contributing to group dynamics that feel authentic and believable. This foundation makes the horror elements more effective by ensuring that audiences care about what happens to these characters rather than simply waiting for the next monster attack or gore sequence. The critical reception of Bambi The Reckoning reflects the complex challenges facing independent horror films that attempt to balance entertainment value with meaningful thematic content, while working within significant budget constraints. Professional critics and audience members have responded to the film with a mixture of appreciation for its environmental themes and technical achievements, alongside criticism of certain pacing and narrative elements that reflect. The film's score on Rotten Tomatoes indicates a generally positive critical response, with 63% of professional reviewers providing favorable assessments of the movie's overall quality and effectiveness. This critical approval rate suggests that despite working within the constraints of independent filmmaking, the creative team successfully delivered a product that meets professional standards for storytelling, technical execution, and thematic coherence within the. Critics have particularly praised the film's commitment to its environmental themes and the way these serious concerns are integrated into the horror framework without overwhelming the entertainment value. Professional reviewers have noted that the movie successfully uses its monster movie structure to address contemporary issues related to corporate environmental responsibility and the long-term consequences of industrial pollution without becoming preachy or sacrosancting the genre. The creature design and practical effects work have received considerable critical attention, with many reviewers noting the effectiveness of the mutated Bambi design in creating a monster that is both frightening and emotionally resonant. Critics have praised the way the design maintains recognizable elements from the beloved character while transforming him into something genuinely threatening, creating a visual representation that serves both the horror requirement. The performances, particularly those of Roxanne McKee and Mulheron, have garnered positive critical response for their ability to ground the fantastic elements in emotional reality. Critics have noted that the cast successfully creates believable family relationships and character dynamics that make audiences care about the characters' fates beyond simple curiosity about who will survive the monster attack. Some critical assessments have noted pacing issues that reflect the challenges of working within a limited runtime while attempting to balance character development, plot exposition, and horror sequences. Critics have suggested that certain story elements might have benefited from additional development time, though most acknowledge that these limitations are understandable given the production's budget constraints and independent status. The environmental themes have received mixed critical response, with some reviewers praising the film's commitment to addressing serious contemporary issues, while others have suggested that the political elements occasionally overwhelm the entertainment value. Critics generally agree that the themes are well integrated into the story structure, though opinions vary on the effectiveness of using horror entertainment as a vehicle for environmental commentary. The film's place within the twisted childhood universe has generated critical discussion about the broader trend of transforming beloved childhood characters into horror entertainment. Critics have noted that Bambi The Reckoning handles this transformation more thoughtfully than some other entries in the subgenre, using the familiar character as a foundation for meaningful thematic exploration rather than simply relying on shock value. Technical aspects of the production have received generally positive critical assessment, with reviewers noting that the film achieves effective production values despite working within obvious budget limitations. Critics have praised the cinematography, sound design, and editing for creating atmospheric horror sequences while maintaining the story's emotional core. The box office performance of Bambi The Reckoning reflects both the challenges and opportunities facing independent horror films in the contemporary marketplace. The film's worldwide gross of approximately $300,000 represents a modest but respectable performance for an independent production working within the limited theatrical release model that characterizes most films in this budget category. The domestic box office performance, generating approximately $170,000 across 300 theaters during its opening weekend, indicates audience interest in the concept while also reflecting the marketing and distribution challenges facing independent horror productions. The limited theatrical run and relatively small theater count suggest that the film was positioned as a niche release targeting genre enthusiasts. The international box office performance has contributed significantly to the film's overall financial success, with overseas markets generating approximately $130,000 to supplement the domestic returns. This international interest suggests that the environmental themes and creature feature elements have appeal beyond English-speaking audiences, indicating potential for continued success in various global markets. The film's performance on video-on-demand platforms following its theatrical release has provided additional revenue streams that help justify the production investment while also reaching audiences who may not have had access to theatrical screenings. The VOD release strategy reflects the contemporary distribution approach for independent horror films, which often rely on digital platforms to reach their core audiences. The production budget of approximately £325,000 represents a significant increase over some other entries in the Twisted Childhood universe, suggesting that the producers recognized the need for enhanced production values to compete effectively in the contemporary horror marketplace. This budget level allowed for more sophisticated creature effects and practical elements while still maintaining the cost efficiency necessary for independent production. The financial performance comparison with other films in the shared universe provides context for understanding the commercial challenges facing this type of production. While the original Winnie, the Pooh Blood and Honey achieved remarkable success relative to its minimal budget, subsequent entries have faced more competitive market conditions and higher audience expectations that have affected their commercial performance. The film's financial success relative to its production costs indicates that the movie achieved profitability, which is crucial for the continued viability of the Twisted Childhood universe and future independent horror productions exploring similar themes. This commercial success provides validation for the creative approach while also supporting continued investment in similar projects. Industry analysts have noted that the film's performance reflects broader trends in the horror genre, where independent productions can achieve commercial success by targeting specific audience niches rather than attempting to compete directly with major studio releases. The environmental themes and creature feature elements appear to have resonated with audiences looking for horror entertainment that addresses contemporary concerns. The theatrical release strategy, utilizing a limited number of screens for a relatively brief run, reflects the realities of independent film distribution while also creating a sense of exclusivity that can drive audience interest. This approach allows for targeted marketing toward genre enthusiasts while managing distribution costs effectively. The film's success in various international markets suggests that the themes and horror elements translate effectively across cultural boundaries, indicating potential for continued international distribution and possible sequel development. The global appeal of environmental themes and creature feature horror provides opportunities for expanded distribution in markets where these elements particularly resonate with audiences. The video-on-demand performance following theatrical release has provided important additional revenue that helps establish the long-term commercial viability of the project. Digital distribution platforms offer opportunities to reach audiences who may have missed the theatrical release while also providing ongoing revenue potential as the film finds its audience over time. The merchandising and licensing opportunities associated with the film's success could provide additional revenue streams that enhance the overall commercial performance of the project. Horror films with memorable creature designs often generate interest in collectibles and related products that can supplement box office and digital sales revenue. The film's financial performance has implications for future entries in the Twisted Childhood universe and similar independent. The successful balance of production cost with revenue generation provides a model for other filmmakers attempting to create commercially viable horror entertainment while addressing serious thematic concerns. The success of the film's limited theatrical release demonstrates that audiences remain interested in theatrical horror experiences despite the growth of streaming platforms and home viewing options. The communal aspect of horror film viewing continued. The international distribution success suggests opportunities for continued expansion of the Twisted Childhood universe in global markets, where audiences have demonstrated interest in this particular approach to horror entertainment. The environmental themes may be particularly relevant in markets where climate change and corporate responsibility are significant public concerns. The film's commercial performance relative to other independent horror productions of similar budget levels indicate the combination of familiar character transformation and contemporary environmental themes appears to have created a product that appeals to both genre enthusiasts and audiences interested in more meaningful horror entertainment. The legacy and cultural impact of Bambi The Reckoning extends far beyond its modest box office performance, representing a significant moment in the evolution of horror cinema's relationship with beloved childhood. The film stands as a landmark entry in the growing subgenre of twisted childhood adaptations, demonstrating how familiar characters can be transformed into vehicles for contemporary social commentary, while maintaining their essential emotional resonance with audiences across different age groups and cultural backgrounds. The movie's influence on independent horror filmmaking cannot be understated, as it represents a successful model for creating commercially viable entertainment that addresses serious environmental concerns without sacrificing the genre elements that audiences expect from horror cinema. The production demonstrates that independent filmmakers can compete effectively in the contemporary marketplace by identifying underserved audience niches and delivering content that speaks to both entertainment desires and deeper cultural anxieties about environmental destruction and corporate responsibility. The environmental themes embedded throughout the narrative have sparked important conversations about the role of entertainment media in addressing climate change and pollution concerns. The film's approach to these issues through the horror framework has proven more effective than traditional documentary approaches in reaching audiences who might otherwise avoid environmental content, suggesting new possibilities for using genre entertainment as a vehicle for important social messaging. The transformation of the beloved Disney character into a horror antagonist represents a broader cultural phenomenon regarding the re-examination of childhood nostalgia in contemporary media. The film participates in ongoing cultural conversations about the ways that seemingly innocent childhood entertainment often contains darker themes and become apparent when viewed through adult perspectives informed by environmental and social justice concerns. The movie's technical achievements in creature design and special effects have influenced other independent horror productions, attempting to create memorable monsters within limited budget constraints. The successful integration of practical and digital effects demonstrates approaches that other filmmakers can adopt when working with similar resource limitations, contributing to the overall advancement of independent genre filmmaking techniques and standards. The performances throughout the film have established new benchmarks for acting in independent horror productions, with particular recognition for the way the cast successfully balances genre requirements with authentic emotional depth. The ensemble work demonstrates that effective horror entertainment requires strong character development and believable relationships, not just impressive creature effects and gore sequences. The film's exploration of family dynamics under extreme stress has resonated with audiences dealing with their own family challenges and relationship difficulties. The authentic portrayal of family tensions and loyalties provides emotional grounding that makes the horror elements more effective, while also offering insights into human behavior under pressure that extend beyond the immediate entertainment context. The corporate conspiracy elements of the story have gained particular relevance as audiences become increasingly aware of real-world environmental cover-ups and corporate irresponsibility. The film's portrayal of the pharmaceutical company's attempts to eliminate evidence and witnesses reflects contemporary concerns about corporate accountability and the lengths companies will go to avoid responsibility for environmental damage. The movie's success in international markets demonstrates the universal appeal of environmental themes and creature feature horror, suggesting opportunity, global distribution, and influence. The environmental concerns addressed in the film transcend national boundaries, making the story relevant to audiences worldwide who are dealing with similar issues related to pollution, climate change, and corporate environmental responsibility. The film's approach to violence and gore has influenced discussions about the appropriate use of graphic content in horror entertainment, with many critics noting that the violence serves thematic purposes. This approach has been adopted by other independent horror productions seeking to create meaningful entertainment that uses disturbing imagery to support larger themes rather than simply exploiting audience discomfort. The creature design for the mutated Bambi has become iconic within horror fan communities, inspiring artwork, cosplay, and other fan-created content that extends the film's cultural influence beyond its original theatrical and digital release. The visual impact of the transformed character has contributed to ongoing discussions about the power of familiar imagery to create new emotional responses when placed in unexpected context. The film's soundtrack and sound design have influenced other independent horror productions in their approach to creating atmospheric audio that supports both horror elements and emotional character moments. The integration of natural forest sounds with more artificial creature vocalizations has become a model for other filmmakers attempting to create believable environments for their monster stories. The cinematography approach has demonstrated creating horror atmosphere using natural locations and practical lighting conditions. The film's visual style has influenced other independent productions by showing how natural environments can be used to create both beautiful and threatening imagery that serves multiple narrative and thematic purposes simultaneously. The editing rhythms established throughout the film have provided a template for other horror productions, attempting to balance character development with genre requirements within limited runtime constraints. The successful integration of exposition, character moments, and horror sequences has demonstrated approaches that other filmmakers can adapt to their own projects and storytelling needs. The film's marketing and distribution strategy has influenced other independent horror productions in their approach to reaching target audiences through digital platforms and limited theatrical releases. The successful use of social media and genre-specific marketing channels has provided a model for other filmmakers attempting to promote independent horror entertainment in the contemporary marketplace. The environmental activism inspired by the film has led to real-world conservation efforts and increased awareness of pollution issues affecting wildlife population. Several environmental organizations have used the film's imagery and themes in their own campaigns, demonstrating the power of entertainment media to inspire actual behavioral change and political engagement beyond simple audience entertainment. The academic analysis of the film has contributed to scholarly discussions about the role of horror cinema in addressing contemporary social issues. Film studies programs have used the movie as an example of how genre entertainment can engage with serious themes while maintaining commercial viability, influencing the next generation of filmmakers and critics. The film's influence on the broader twisted childhood universe has established narrative and thematic standards that subsequent entries must meet or exceed. The successful balance of familiar character transformation with meaningful social commentary has raised expectations for future films in the series while also demonstrating the potential for continued creative exploration within this framework. The merchandising opportunities created by the film's memorable creature design have generated additional revenue streams, while also extending the cultural influence of the movie beyond its original. The various collectibles and related products have helped maintain audience awareness of the film, while also supporting the financial viability of future productions in the series. The fan community engagement generated by the film has created ongoing discussions and analysis that continue to generate interest and cultural relevance long after the initial release. The active fan base has contributed to the film's longevity while also supporting continued interest in it. The film's influence on other media has extended to television, literature, and video game productions that have adopted similar approaches to transforming familiar characters and addressing environmental themes through genre entertainment. The successful model established by the movie has inspired creators across different media platforms to explore similar creative territory. The educational applications of the film have led to its use in environmental science courses and media literacy programs as an example of how entertainment can address serious issues while maintaining audience engagement. The movie serves as a case study for the potential of genre entertainment to contribute to important social conversations and behavioral change. The film's legacy within British independent cinema has established it as an important example of successful low-budget horror production that achieves both commercial viability and cultural relevance. The movie demonstrates that British filmmakers can compete effectively in global markets by identifying unique creative approaches and executing them with professional standards and genuine artistic commitment. The ongoing cultural conversations inspired by the film continue to generate new insights into the relationship between entertainment media and environmental activism. The movie has become a reference point for discussions about the responsibility of filmmakers to address contemporary social issues while also providing effective entertainment that meets audience expectations for genre satisfaction. The technical innovations developed during the production have influenced other independent horror films in their approach to creature design, practical effects, and digital integration. The creative solutions developed to work within budget constraints have provided other filmmakers with practical approaches to achieving impressive production values while maintaining financial efficiency. The film's success in demonstrating the commercial viability of environmental horror has encouraged other filmmakers to explore similar themes while also attracting investor interest in projects that combine genre entertainment with social commentary. The movie has helped establish environmental horror as a legitimate subgenre with both artistic merit and commercial potential. The international festival circuit success has provided the film with prestigious recognition that enhances its cultural legitimacy while also creating opportunities for continued distribution and influence. The festival screenings have introduced the movie to audiences and critics who might not otherwise encounter independent horror productions, expanding its cultural impact beyond traditional genre boundaries. The scholarly research inspired by the film have contributed to academic. The movie has become a subject of study for researchers investigating the effectiveness of different approaches to environmental communication and the role of emotion in motivating behavioral change related to environmental issues. The director's vision and creative approach to transforming Bambi into a horror antagonist represents one of the most challenging aspects of the entire production process, requiring careful balance between respecting the beloved character's legacy while also creating something genuinely frightening and thematically meaningful for contemporary audiences. Dan Allen brought a unique perspective to the project, having previously worked on atmospheric horror films that emphasized mood and character development over purely exploited elements, making him an ideal choice for handling the delicate transformation of such an iconic childhood figure. Allen's approach to the material focused on what he describes as the death of childhood and loss of innocence, themes that resonate deeply with audiences who have grown up to discover that the natural world they were taught to love and protect is under constant threat from human industrial activity and environmental destruction. This thematic foundation provided the creative team with a solid conceptual framework for justifying the transformation of the gentle forest creature into an instrument of vengeance and ecological justice. The screenplay development process involved extensive collaboration between Allen and writer Rhys Warrington, who worked to integrate the director's thematic vision with the practical requirements of creating an effective horror narrative within the established framework of the twisted childhood universe. The writing process required careful attention to balancing exposition about the environmental themes with the pacing demands of horror entertainment, ensuring that the political message would enhance rather than overwhelm the genre elements. The pre-production phase involved extensive research into deer behavior and forest ecology to ensure that the transformed Bambi would retain enough realistic animal characteristics to remain believable despite his mutation. The creative team consulted with wildlife experts and environmental scientists to understand how toxic contamination might realistically affect forest animals, providing scientific grounding for the fantastical transformation at the heart of the story. Location scouting presented unique challenges as the production team needed to find forest areas that would provide both visual authenticity and practical advantages for filming complex creature sequences. The chosen locations in the British countryside offered natural beauty that reinforced the environmental themes while also providing the isolation necessary for creating the sense of vulnerability and entrapment that drives the horror elements throughout the narrative. The creature design process represented one of the most crucial aspects of the entire production, as the success of the film would depend largely on creating a version of Bambi that could function as both a tragic figure and a genuinely frightening monster. The design team at Bowling Point worked closely with Alan to develop a creature that would retain recognizable elements from the beloved character while incorporating horrific details that would make him genuinely threatening to both characters and audiences. The design evolution involved numerous iterations and refinements, as the team experimented with different approaches to balancing familiarity with horror impact. Early concepts explored more subtle transformations that emphasized the character's tragic nature, while later versions incorporated more dramatically horrific elements designed to create maximum fear response from audiences. The final design successfully synthesizes these competing concerns into a creature that serves both emotional and horror functions. The practical effects challenges were compounded by budget constraints and tight production schedules that limited the team's ability to create full-scale practical creatures for on-set interaction. The creative team developed innovative solutions using green screen, stand-ins, and reference objects that would allow actors to interact with physical elements during film, providing the flexibility necessary for digital creature creation in post-production. The filming process required careful coordination between the various departments to ensure that all the technical elements would work together effectively during post-production. Director Alan worked closely with the cinematography team to establish lighting and camera movement patterns that would support both the practical filming requirements and the eventual digital creature integration, ensuring visually throughout the final product. The performance direction focused on helping the actors create believable reactions to threats and creatures that would not be present during filming. Alan worked extensively with the cast to establish the creature's presence and behavior patterns through rehearsal and discussion, allowing the actors to develop consistent responses to the digital character that would feel authentic in the final cut. The post-production process involved extensive collaboration between Alan and the visual effects team to refine the creature performance and ensure that Bambi's actions and movements would support both the horror requirements and the emotional themes of the story. The director worked closely with the animators to develop creature behavior patterns that would feel both animal-like and supernatural. The sound design process required creating an entirely new vocal palette for the mutated Bambi, working with sound designers to develop creature vocalizations that would transform familiar deer sounds into something genuinely threatening. The color grading and visual treatment involved extensive experimentation to establish the appropriate visual tone for the story's environmental themes and horror-mental themes. Alan worked with the post-production team to develop a color palette that would emphasize the contrast between the natural beauty of the forest setting and the horror that unfolds within it, using visual elements to reinforce the thematic concerns about environmental destruction. The editing process required careful attention to pacing and rhythm to maintain audience engagement while building toward effective horror sequences and emotional climaxes. Alan collaborated with the editorial team to establish cutting patterns that would support both character development and genre requirements, ensuring that the final cut would deliver both entertainment value and thematic coherence. The music supervision involved selecting and developing musical themes that would support both the horror elements and the environmental message without overwhelming the more subtle aspects of the story. Alan worked with composers to create a score that would enhance the emotional impact of key scenes, while also providing the dramatic emphasis necessary for effective horror entertainment. The production design required creating authentic feeling environments that would support both the family drama elements and the creature feature sequences. Alan collaborated with the design team to establish visual styles and practical locations that would serve multiple narrative functions, while also reinforcing the environmental themes through careful attention to natural details and ecological authenticity. The casting process involved finding actors who could handle both the dramatic requirements of their roles and the technical challenges of working with digital creature elements. Alan worked with casting directors to identify performers who could bring emotional authenticity to their characters while also delivering the strong physical performances necessary for effective horror sequences. The rehearsal process focused on establishing character relationships and family dynamics. Alan conducted extensive table reads and character development sessions to ensure that the actors would have solid foundations for their performances despite the technical challenges of working with digital creature elements. The cinematography approach emphasized natural lighting and handheld camera work to create documentary-style authenticity that would make the fantastical elements feel more believable. Alan collaborated with the director of photography to develop visual strategies that would support both the intimate character moments and the larger-scale creature sequences. The special effects coordination required careful planning to integrate practical gore elements with digital creature work throughout the various death scenes and action sequences. Alan worked with effects supervisors to ensure that all the technical elements would serve the story's thematic purposes, while also delivering the visceral impact necessary for effective horror entertainment. The marketing collaboration involved working with distributors and publicity teams to develop promotional strategies that would accurately represent the film's environmental themes, while also appealing to horror audiences expecting traditional genre. Alan participated in numerous interviews and promotional events to explain his creative approach and thematic intentions to potential audiences. The festival strategy involved selecting appropriate venues for premiering the film to audiences who would appreciate both its technical achievements and its environmental message. Alan worked with distributors to identify festivals and events where the movie would receive thoughtful consideration rather than. The critical engagement process involved extensive interviews and discussions about the creative choices behind transforming beloved childhood characters into horror entertainment. Alan participated in numerous media appearances to explain his thematic approach and defend the artistic validity of using familiar characters to address contemporary environmental concerns. The legacy planning involved considering how the film. Alan worked with producers to ensure that his creative vision would be preserved, while also supporting the commercial and artistic goals of the larger franchise. The international distribution considerations required adapting the marketing and presentation approach for different global markets with varying cultural relationships to both environmental themes and childhood character transformations. Alan collaborated with international distributors to ensure the film's themes would translate effectively across cultural. The technical innovations and creative solutions employed throughout the production of Bambi The Reckoning demonstrate the ingenuity and resourcefulness required for independent filmmaking, particularly when attempting to create convincing creature effects within limited budget constraints and compressed production schedules. The 15-day shooting schedule imposed significant challenges on every department, requiring careful pre-planning and efficient execution to capture all the necessary footage while maintaining the quality standards necessary for effective horror entertainment. The creature animation and visual effects pipeline represented one of the most complex aspects of the entire production process, with the team at Bowling Point working to create a digital Bambi that would feel both photorealistic and emotionally resonant within the story's framework. The animation process required extensive reference material and careful study of deer movement and behavior to ensure that the creature would retain believable characteristics despite his supernatural abilities and mutated appearance. The motion capture and performance reference work involved extensive collaboration between the director, visual effects team, and actors to establish consistent creature behavior and interaction patterns throughout the film. The animators studied real deer footage, while also incorporating predatory animal movements to create a creature that would feel both familiar and threatening, balancing the character's tragic origins with his current role as a horror antagonist. The lighting integration challenges required careful coordination between the cinematography and visual effects teams to ensure that the digital creature would feel naturally integrated. The team used practical lighting rigs and reference objects during filming to capture accurate lighting information that could later be applied to the digital creature, ensuring visual consistency between the practical and computer-generated elements. The texture and surfacing work on the digital Bambi involved creating detailed skin, fur, and antler materials that would hold up under close examination while also conveying the character's mutation and corruption. The artist developed multiple texture passes and surface treatments to show the effects of toxic contamination on the creature's appearance, using visual details to reinforce the environmental themes while also creating a genuinely unsettling visual presence. The composite work required seamlessly integrating the digital creature into filmed plates while maintaining the illusion of physical interaction between Bambi and the human character. The compositing team used advanced masking and rotoscoping techniques to ensure that the creature would feel properly grounded in the physical environment, paying particular attention to shadow casting and environmental interaction details. The practical props and stand-in elements played crucial roles in maintaining the illusion of physical interaction between the digital creature and the live-action elements. The production team created green screen reference objects that matched the planned creature's dimensions and proportions, allowing actors to interact with physical elements that could later be replaced with the fully rendered digital character. The sound design and audio post-production work involved creating an entirely new vocal palette for the mutated Bambi, layering natural deer vocalizations with more aggressive and supernatural elements to create creature sounds that would be both recognizable and threatening. The sound team experimented with different approaches to vocalization and breathing effects to establish the creature's presence and emotional state throughout various scenes. The environmental audio design required creating believable forest soundscapes that would support both the peaceful moments and the horror sequences, using natural ambient sounds to reinforce the environmental themes while also providing audio cues that would enhance tension and atmosphere. The audio team recorded original forest sounds while also incorporating more artificial elements to create unsettling audio environment. The music composition and scoring process involved developing musical themes that would support both the creature's tragic backstory and his current role as a source of terror and vengeance. The composers worked to create musical motifs that would enhance the emotional complexity of the character while also providing the dramatic emphasis necessary for effective horror sequences and creature reveal. The editing and post-production workflow required careful management of multiple technical elements while maintaining narrative pacing and emotional flow. Throughout the film's runtime, the editorial team worked closely with the visual effects supervisors to ensure that creature sequences would integrate seamlessly with the live-action footage while supporting the story's dramatic and horror requirements. The color correction and grading process involved establishing visual tones that would support both the natural beauty of the forest settings and the horror elements of the creature sequences. The colorists worked to create looks that would emphasize the contrast between the peaceful surface appearance of the woodland environment and the violence and corruption that lurk beneath. The marketing and promotional material development required creating compelling imagery and video content that would accurately represent the film's quality and themes while appealing to both horror audiences and viewers interested in environmental messages. The marketing team worked with the visual effects artists to create promotional materials featuring the creature design while avoiding major plot spoilers. The distribution strategy coordination involved working with various platforms and venues to ensure that the film would reach its intended audiences through appropriate channels and promotional approaches. The distribution team developed different marketing approaches for theatrical releases versus digital platforms, recognizing the different audience expectations and viewing context for each release. The international sales and licensing negotiations required presenting the film's technical achievements and thematic content to potential distributors and exhibitors in various global markets. The sales team worked to communicate the production's professional standards and commercial appeal while also highlighting the environmental themes that might resonate particularly strongly in certain international markets. The merchandise and licensing opportunities development involved creating products and promotional materials that would extend the film's reach while also generating additional revenue streams to support the production's financial success. The licensing team worked with various partners to develop collectibles and related products featuring the memorable creature, design, and environmental themes. The sequel and franchise development discussions required evaluating the creative and commercial potential for continued exploration of the character and themes established in the original film. The creative team assessed audience response and commercial performance to determine whether additional entries in the series would be viable, while maintaining the artistic integrity of the original vision. The cast and crew wrap celebrations and recognition events provided opportunities to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of all the individuals who contributed to the production's success, despite the challenging constraints and tight schedules. These events also served to maintain relationships and collaborative spirit for potential future projects within the Twisted Childhood universe or other independent horror productions. The film festival submission and screening strategy involved identifying appropriate venues where the movie would receive thoughtful consideration from audiences and critics who would appreciate both its technical achievements and thematic content. The festival strategy helped establish the film's artistic credentials while also creating opportunities for press coverage and critical attention. The press and media engagement campaign required coordinating interviews and promotional appearances that would effectively communicate the film's artistic vision and technical achievements to potential audiences. The publicity team worked with the director and key cast members to develop messaging that would appeal to both horror fans and viewers interested in environmental themes. The academic and educational outreach efforts involved making the film available for use in film studies programs and environmental education contexts, where it could serve as an example of how entertainment media can address serious contemporary issues. These educational applications helped extend the film's cultural impact beyond pure entertainment value. The archival and preservation planning ensured that the film's technical achievements and creative process would be properly documented, and the preservation efforts included maintaining high-quality masters and behind-the-scenes materials that could support continued distribution and academic analysis. The industry recognition and awards consideration involved submitting the film to various competitions and recognition programs that celebrate technical achievement and thematic innovation in independent filmmaking. The technical documentation and case study development involved creating detailed records of the creative and technical processes used throughout the production, providing valuable reference materials for other filmmakers attempting similar projects. These documentation efforts contribute to the broader knowledge base of independent horror filmmaking techniques and environmental storytelling approaches. The community engagement and environmental activism connections involved partnering with conservation organizations and environmental groups that could use the film's themes and imagery to support their own educational and advocacy efforts. These partnerships helped extend the movie's impact beyond entertainment into real-world environmental awareness and action. The long-term cultural impact assessment involved evaluating how the film's transformation of the beloved childhood character and environmental themes might influence future entertainment productions and cultural conversations. The ongoing analysis helps understand the broader significance of the movie within contemporary discussions about childhood, environmentalism, and the role of entertainment in addressing serious social issues.